Oh me, oh life. Well, that does sound dramatic, especially around tea time. Let's hear some poetry from Ashwani Kumar, Ashwin Vijayan, Soni Somarajan, and Sudeep Sen, and hear what their sighs and exclamations are all about.
So, thank you Bangalore Poetry Festival 2022 once again, and thank you City of Bangalore, City of Poetry, Eternal City of Poetry. Since morning, I'm meeting friends, writers, including Shiva Prakash, he speaks the language of Shiva through the language of Kannada, So this is mesmerizing, journey so far. So we are here, and without any much ado or any philosophical, lamentation on the state of the poetry or the state of the politics in the country. It's all about poetry. So what we are going to do, four of us, we are going to entertain you. We are going to take you through poetry and different genres of poetry, geographies of poetry, and also different metaphors of poetry also. So first, let me do something very special here. Our very eminent poet, Sudeep Sen is here. His Converse is right there. Go and buy Converse and make Atagalata happy. Make Atagalata more Galata, because Converse is there and is a definite text about all of us, I mean, like, I'm sure that other poets, language poets must be, resenting a little bit that only English. But, when I was hearing the previous panel, it's not, Nana, Nani, we don't have to write about grandmother, grandfather. Nana, Nani are there, already there in English. So here, a very special announcement I want to make here. Our Sudeep Sen, I mean, everyone who knows Sudeep, I mean, like Sudeep has traversed generations of poets and poetry back home here in the country. And this is here, a work, a very definitive work has been done on Sudeep Sen. Please give him a big hand for this work on Sudeep Sen. Yeah, and here, let's just, we just want to do a little ritual, just a minute or so. Soni. So here is the book, and the book is available here at Atagalata. And first I would invite Sudeep to speak a little bit about, a minute or two about the book. And then Sudeep will read some of his latest works, I guess, and will take you through converse and conversations also about poetry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Give him a big hand once again.
Sleepy hour, there are a lot of people with wide eyes. So it's wonderful to see that. We just had a beautiful session before. Thank you guys. I think you read all beautiful poems. Maza aa gaya. Just feel it's worth being here. It's a bit of an unbelievable thing because this is sort of a formal launch, or not really a formal launch, it's a celebration of this book. Dr. Raman Nair, who was now retired, the former head of department at Osmania University in Hyderabad, over the years has done a lot of academic papers on my work and so on. But this came as an amazing surprise after 25 years of engaging with her as a professional. She's produced this critical work on my 35 years of writing. Some of my close friends, of course, they'll pull my leg and say, "Ab ho gaya, buddha hai, finished."
You can't be Sudeep.
But thank you for being part of a lovely journey. And the journey continues. The journey continues with Converse, which we launched yesterday, essentially a celebration of Indian poetry. Given my heart and soul to that. It's a thankless job. Anyone you leave out from the book is an immediate enemy. It's not fair. I mean, but the best part is I get to read so much fantastic poetry, and only so many can be in a book, and it's really a celebration. I'll read a poem from my new book, Anthropocene, which is a response to climate change and the pandemic. And the bulk of the book is actually about hope and consolation. This poem called Disembodied is set in the city of Delhi, my home city, written in the early days of the pandemic. And I'm asthmatic, so during the winter months, Delhi is completely unlivable, unbreathable. So part of it is about that. Disembodied. My body carved from abandoned bricks of a ruined temple, from minaret shards of an old mosque, from slate remnants of a medieval church apse, from soil tilled by my ancestors. My bones don't fit together correctly as they should. The searing ultraviolet light from aurora borealis patches and etch corrects my orientation. Magnetic pulses prove potent. My flesh sculpted from the fruits of the tropics, blood from coconut water, skin colored by brown bark of Indian teak. My lungs fueled by Delhi's insidious toxic air, echo asthmatic sounds, a new vinyl dub remix. Our universe where radiation germinates from human follies, where contamination persists from mistrust, where pleasures of sex are merely a sport, where everything is ambition, everything is desire, everything is nothing, nothing and everything. White light everywhere, but no one can recognize its hue. No one knows that there is color in it, all possible colors. Body worshipped not for its blessings, but its contour. Artificial shape shaped by Nautilus. Skin moistened by L'Oreal and not by season's first rains. Skeleton strength not shaped by earthquakes or slow molded by fearless forest fires. Ice caps are rapidly melting, too fast to arrest glacial slide. In the near future, there will be no water left or too much water that is undrinkable, excess water that will drown us all. Disembodied floats afloat like Noah's Ark. No GPS, no pole star navigation, no fossil fuel to burn away, just maps with empty grids and names of places that might exist. Already, there's too much traffic on the road. Unpeopled hollow metal shells without brakes swerve about, directionless, looking for an elusive compass. Thank you. This is a very short poem. It's called That Is I.E. And I sent this poem to my son, who, of course, responds saying, Baba, no, one more poem. But he did write back saying, you know, I actually kind of liked it. And that was sufficient, that his aesthetic nerves were tickled. That's good enough for me. But of course, he also confessed that it's beautiful, but I have no idea what it's all about. But my son, so that's good. So it's dedicated to him, Arya, A-R-I-A. That is because you hear the sound of a lone rustling leaf, you hear the sea. That is because I consider the sea silent, you hear its silence in my studio. That is, and because of that, the silence will not empty the sea of its leaves. One of the things of being in the trade for 35 years is you meet students. And one of my students requested me to read this poem. So I'm just reading it for her and her family. Her mother particularly wanted this poem to be read out, so it's really for Auntie. It's an old poem. It's from my book, Fractals, which collects poems from 1980 to 2015, and also has translations in it. It's called Kargil. Of course, I don't have to explain the context, except that I went to Kargil 10 years after the war. And it wasn't on my itinerary. My son and I were doing this trip. We drove all the way from Delhi to Srinagar, across to Leh, Ladakh, through Kulu and back, 2 months on the road, camping. But he was young then, and he was at a point where he was playing with plastic guns and toys, and he says, Baba, let's go to Kargil, we'll find shells and everything. Of course, you don't say no to your child. He was very sheepish because, the town was boring, dusty, nothing happened. It was just an outpost. But I say I'm grateful to you because this poem happened and these crazy things that happened. So it's a gift of my son to me. It opens with an epigraph from Derek Walcott's book-length poem. It's called Teopola's Hound. You must read some of his poetry. I mean, he writes these modern, extensive epics, Omeros being the more famous one, which won him the Nobel Prize. And I quote Kargil, and I quote from Teopola's Hound. A street of smoke and fences, gutters gorged with weed and reeking, scorching iron grooves of rusted galvanize, a dialect forged from burning asphalt, and a sky that moves with thunderhead cumuli, grumbling with rain. 10 years on, I came searching for war signs of the past, expecting remnants, magazine debris, unexploded shells, shrapnels that mark bomb wounds. I came looking for ghosts, people past, skeletons charred, abandoned brick, wood, cement that once housed them. I could only find whispers among the clamor of a small town outpost in full throttle, everyday chores sketching outward signs of normalcy and life. In that bustle, I spot war lines of a decade ago, though the storylines are kept buried, wrapped in old newsprint. There's order amid uneasiness, the muezzins cry, the monks chant, baritones merging in their separateness. At the bus station, black coughs of exhaust, smoke screen everything. The roads meet, and after the crossroad ritual, diverge, skating along the undotted lines of control. A porous garland with cracked beads adorns Tiger Hill. Beyond the mountains are dark memories, and beyond them, no one knows. And beyond them, no one wants to know. Even the flight of birds that wing over their crests don't know which feathers to down. Chameleon-like they fly, tracing perfect parabolas. I look up and calculate their exact arc and find instead a flawed theorem.
Thank you, Sudeep, for your magical transversal verses, Poetry is, I don't think that elastic, ma'am, but, I'm sure that, anyone who is a timekeeper, perhaps, poet loves to violate that. But we will do it in our own poetic, metaphorical way. Without letting anyone know, we will do that. Next, let me welcome Soni, Somarajan. And you're familiar with Soni. His book, First Contract, is critically reviewed and accepted. Give him a warm welcome. Soni is his work is, is a major voice today of this generation. As a poet, editor, and also creative director at the Quarantine Train. So welcome, Soni.
Thank you all for being here today, despite the famous Bangalorean traffic. And that means there is hope for poetry. And so yay, you know. So I'll just get along. These poems are from my book, First Contact, which was published in 2020 by Red River. And the first poem is about the person we meet first in our life. You know who it is. This is based on a photograph from 1973, a week after I was born. And the photograph has my mother holding me in her arms. And I was just trying to understand what her thoughts must be. In Amma's arms, where rains rain and fruit trees perfume the air, there is the wonder of life. It shows in how we look at each other, a language ripening every year when monsoon checks in. She looks dazed by what she holds. This life has asked her so very easily to be what no mother's ready for, to serve its plan as many times before, promising her that it's the future she holds. If you were a stranger to our reigns, seemingly infinite, you would first watch it lash on, then grow impatient as it sings from a bottomless throat, while you might wonder, like my mother, about having to stay home forever. This poem is about the first communist I ever met, my grandfather. And this poem is from 1979, based on you will understand from the poem, yeah. The day communism died. Let words distance themselves like my widowed grandmother. Wear the simplest of cotton, eat the thinnest air, and depend on money orders. The family and anyone who counted discussed the ayes and nays of a cremation as grandfather's body lay beside a flickering lamp, never lit while he was alive. Filled to its seams, the room holds its breath, unable to mount the one who built it. The periods of hush, broken often by a sudden wail, sometimes a staccato. In death, this free-for-all manifests a betrayal of the departed, the comrade's faith, preserved carefully once and now undone. The public washes away the private, rendering everything pointless.
Oh, wonderful. Maybe one short poem.
Yeah. The last poem is from the year I joined a public school, which was residential. It's from 1984. And we had a small trunk which carried all our valuables while we were in school through those 7-year period. So here it is, the black trunk. The admission letter insisted it had to be a black metal trunk. After a day or two in the city, Father realized he wasn't going to find one until he had an idea. Buy a metal trunk and paint it black. Sounds like it's in our instinct to find meaning in things around us. And if we don't, to create one, a lie, like a like a metal trunk painted black to pretend as a black metal trunk. Father says to me, it's carrying more than just socks, shoes, shorts, shirts, soap, and sewing thread. The trunk is carrying your future. Mother tells him, it's just an ordinary trunk. First you paint it black, then you say it carries his future, and that's 2 lies in a row. Years later, father still finds new meaning in everything, and mother keeps raining on his parade. There's a lot about them in me, these 2 sides jostling. My inheritance is an absence of certainty, a silence that takes shape as poetry.
Oh, lovely, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, we are running out of time, but still twins are here, Ashwins are here. So now Ashwin Vijayan. Ashwin Vijayan is a poet, editor, and also teaches English in Calicut. And he's a young voice and a very rare voice, very sophisticated voice. Well, Ashwin. Yeah.
I hope I'm audible. So I will be reading very short poems.
Not necessarily very short poem. You have enough time. Please.
Sure. Thank you. I usually write, express myself, express my worries or certain questions that haunt me through my poetry. And the poems that I'll be reading today all ask certain different questions. So the first one I would like to start with is nesting. We are out of touch. The last time you called, you were on the floor of Chennai Central, waiting for the night train home. Kudande, shan't we meet? Kuduga, to add. Kudu, nest. Koot, friendship. So much of what I have lost in just one word. Next 2 poems are sort of companion poems, so I'll be reading them together without breaks. The first one is called Signal, and the second one is called Crossing. Signal. The little green man fascinates me. He is on every street. He waits impatiently with those walking the city, negotiating its urgencies on foot. But the pedestrian is a rule breaker. She will not always wait for the green man. The moment she spies an empty street or a traffic jam, she weaves her way to the other side. At certain times of the day, when you wait at the signal near Fisherwick Church or Botanic Gardens, you will overhear a parent croon to their toddler. Wait for the little green man, Aaron. And Aaron will wait, balancing himself against the pram. It must be the meandering streets coming in from every side that has sent the green man on a stroll through the night sky above Shaftesbury Square. I go to bed and hear the traffic signal in front of Grant House. It is a pedestrian crossing. With no green man to guide people across, the lights panic. Those who try to cross the sticks are paraded by frenzied beats. The thin stream of traffic screeches to a halt. In my dreams, the green man transfigures into a stone sculpture, a face carved out of green leaves symbolic of rebirth. Like the leaves on the English oaks, the green man reminds you of changing seasons. Carved in stone, he symbolizes impermanence and cyclicality. The green man appears in all his forms, the foliate head, the disgorging head, the bloodsucker head. I wake up to the chimes of church bells at 9:22. The green man flashes. It is too late to cross. Crossing. I wait for the green man by the shore of a zebra crossing. I am in Belfast, Calicut, Chennai, London, all at once. The car screeched to a halt and I stroll across, suddenly wondering why I had crossed at all. And I'll just wrap up with one more short poem. Yeah, it's called A Woolly Mammoth on the Shore. He's at the beach this Sunday, watching the sand, wondering where the sea has gone. The tea vendors and the pickle sellers are gone too. The crows caw and wait to pick his bone clean off. He hears the sea over the din of kites fluttering in the branches, but still cannot see. He remembers the artist who once drew a portrait to be hung on his wall. He was posed as a thinker with a limb resting on his chin. He puts aside his orange-brown coat he bought from a foreign market at a bargain one winter on his way to a weekend fair. In his prime, he worked 20 hours a day, some days, and even gave up his rest days. Now, he's relaxed, sits back, and enjoys the sand and salt on his face. And he dreams of his tusks drenched in seawater. And thank you. Thank you for
Thank you, Ashwin. And then calls that Aswani brings anarchic energy. I'm sorry, guys, today, because of the time constraints, and I'm not a teacher of time, but I'm terrorized by time today. First time in my 30 years of career. I've never been so frightened of time, but first I'm frightened. But I love, love the city, and Praveen, I guess, I'm not gonna, but I'm certainly, I'm gonna speak about Auntie Maria. Auntie Maria is my way of dealing with language, and it's also about, I'm exiled, from language, being migrant myself, and my Granny Maria. And this Granny Maria poem is inspired by, if you can pay attention to the Granny Maria, it's a short poem, just one poem. I guess you can tolerate me. Just one poem about Granny Maria, Newari architecture, and also Tantric architecture in Nepal. About Granny Maria. Granny Maria's village home was an old poem. It resembled a floating ship, a cloudy rock, or a mirror of red ribbons in the prep school. It was 5 stories tall without any walls. Its roofs were infinite surrogate seasons embroidered with songs on banana leaves. Floors upstairs and downstairs were carnival tricks. There were 55 windows, gossiping, giggling, brokering peace among unfaithful lovers. At the doorway, aging gypsies on wooden toy lions guarded all our possessions marked with ascetic asterisks. Granny Maria's parents, Mr. Nandi and Mrs. Nandi, were distant cousins of Chapatista. They erred, slurred, while selling lamps in the refugee camps. Occasionally, they came to the village, burned effigies of indigo planters, and taught neighbors to cook octopus in creamy sauce. People say, I don't know, people say everyone in the village loved pinto beans and red paprika. But Granny Maria, my Granny Maria, grew up on pancakes, cakes, apple pies, and crunchy crackers. After a shot of white rum punch, Granny sang, "Picanto, picanto, per le santo, picanto, per le santo." We don't remember what those words meant, but we know that she, in heat-proof pleated cotton skirt and blouse, often slept in the clay fireplace. After the Civil War, when there was no grain in the house, nor black salt, with ivory hoop in her left toe, she climbed to the sky on the pretext of worshipping a snake-armed god. She unstitched the lining of the heavens with her squeaking scissors, plucked sea almonds, roasted them in the heat of lightning, and fed the daughters of unwed sparrows. All we know, everyone in my village lived happily ever after. You would never see her again. You would never see her again, but visit Granny Maria's house in my village. It is still an old poem. It is still an old poem. Thank you very much, Bangalore. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Please, Siddharth, I was thinking of dedicating a little section to your dad. if you allow me, and this is kind of my, again, language atrocity and also my mischievous irreverence, you know. Very, very short passage from Banaras, and this is a political poem. I'm hugely conscious of the fact of, you know, facing consequences, but here, since I'm speaking English, I hope I'm not facing consequences. Yeah, so I'm not gonna drag you into trouble, but, so I'm going to read some sanitized portions. And Manglesh Dabral has translated, deleted some of the portions in Hindi because it tells me some people read Hindi carefully, Ashwani. Yeah, so this poem is actually Anatomy of Banarasi. I'm very carefully using the term Banarasi. It is used by Abul Fazl. It's not the real Banarasi, so don't blame me. And also it's done by Major James Runnell. Major James Runnell was first Surveyor General of India. He's a cartographer genius and also mapped entire India. And he also, you know, every Bengali knows the Bengal Atlas. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read this one. I mean, like, I'm leaving the controversial, so-called controversial, but I don't think controversial. I'm told by the police commissioner here that, you know, you won't face any problem. Because this is, you know, the first you published 5 years back, so under IPC, you're fine. So let me say, dedicated to Siddharth's dad, you know, Jayantoda, if I can call him. In a fantasy facade of ritual picnicking, in a fantasy facade of Section 2 of Banaras, in a fantasy facade of ritual picnicking, left-wing Naga and right-wing Gosai, who often gambled, played, and relieved themselves in the overflowing dump yard in the narrow lanes of the Banarasi city, attacked the Momins from the memory bazaar. We were told they were jobless migrants, they were corders, spinners, yarn makers, dyers. They were armed with looms, spindles, and 72 extra threads. Rumor said, James Prinsep, Tavernier, and Siri 1008 Dandapani were in the crowd when slaughtering of a mother cow and destruction of Emperor's mosque took place. As soon as radio jockeys Tiwari ji and Daddan Mian announced, Mandir Masjid wahi banega, Mandir Masjid wahi banega, all flamingos and dark-skinned slaves fled the city. Puzzled, we saw Brahmins, sheikhs, Jain priests looting pink feathers from designer shops. Blood, dripping from blood, mostly red, without any past austerities, spilled in opaque dysentery design all over the mathematical tiles on the promenade of Banaras Ghats. With canvas wings, severed bodies floated in the airs of hatred and blossomed like untimely old Scottish roses. Seeing this, Kabir began to weep. Sadho re sadho, ye murdo ka gaon, पीर मरे पैगंबर मरी हैं, मर गए जिंदा जोगी, राजा मरी हैं, प्रजा मरी हैं, मर गए वैद्य रोगी. Keep in mind, this is a village of the dead. The saints have died, dead are the living mendicants. The ruler is dead, dead are the rule, dead are the physician and the patients. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Thank you very much. Thank you.